So here's what feels true to me. What feels true is that in the United States, as elsewhere, Britain, I think the same is true in France and Germany. You'd have to tell me about Estonia. Probably, well, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But there is this class. Americans get very uncomfortable when you start talking about classes. But there is a group, a class, a stratum at this stage of people who've been educated in a particular way in particular institutions, elite, fancy institutions, who have absorbed ideas that are broadly speaking to the left or progressive, and who now populate our vast federal government and a number of state capitals. And the notion of a permanent elite or a permanent bureaucracy, the term that Trump uses is the deep state. I'm not sure the deep state is a term that makes it sound sinister. And I suppose in a certain sense it is sinister or can be sinister, but I've always preferred to refer to it as simply the permanent bureaucracy, because that seems to me to get to the underlying structure of what's going on. It's people who share a belief in government. Why wouldn't they? In many cases, their income comes from government, or they they tend to be allied with political figures who benefit, who win votes, who harvest votes, so to speak, by promising their constituents money that they will tax away from other people. So you've got this machine of bureaucrats where every decision tends to the left, and political figures who've worked out that they can use the government to redistribute resources away from other people's constituents and to their own. And I was just talking to, earlier today, I was talking to Christopher Rufo, a young guy who's a conservative journalist and activist, really, I think would have to be the term. And I'm going to have to send him a note and get the citation for this, but he said, government, this sounds correct, that government in this country now accounts for about 40% of GDP. And I've seen estimates that it's more than that. So you can imagine, we've got a GDP of about $17 trillion. So 40% of that is a lot. And it can support a large population of people who live off it and direct it. And he said, in communist China, the government sector is smaller than it is in this country. Well, that was a slap in the face. That's really an idea that takes some getting used to, but it gets to this question of the elite. The elite are the people who live off other people's money and tell the people on whose money they're living how they should lead their lives, and use the government to do both, to both extract resources from other Americans for their own benefit, and to use the coercive apparatus of the state to force, cajole, threaten the rest of the population. It's always in a leftist direction. It's always in the direction of more and more and more government. And recently, what's happened, the situation that I just described was taking place in the Reagan years. What's new is this new progressive woke agenda, which touches on all kinds of questions of sexual identity, what is and isn't a family, whether genuinely free speech is acceptable or not. They say not. Are men men and women women? They say no, 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 no. It's all a social construct. And those beliefs can't be held by more than 10 or at the very most 15% of the population. And you now have the whole apparatus of the federal government attempting to enforce it on all Americans. That's the elite. I detest and that
Yeah.
concerns me.